Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on demand care for common ailments such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
Hi, I'm Charlie Hunt.
And I'm Jackie Kettler. We're both political scientists who also love to gossip about political scandals.
In Season 1 of Scandalized, we told the stories of some of our favorite scandals from across American history.
While we work on Season 2, we're dropping 5 brand new bite-sized episodes to whet your appetite.
Listen to new episodes of Scandalized starting Monday, September 29th at boisestatepublicradio.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
More Idaho Matters now from the studios of Boise State Public Radio News. I'm Gemma Gaudette. Boys and men are struggling with education, with their mental health, even addiction, and many of them are doing it in silence. So here's the question: what's going on, and does masculinity have anything to do with it? Dr. Matthew Janucki is an associate professor in the Department of Psychological Sciences with Boise State University, and he'll be answering those questions in his upcoming lecture at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute next month, and he's joining us now for a preview. Dr. Janucki, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Gemma. Great to be with you.
So let's start with the big question. What is happening with boys and men today? I mean, what trends or challenges are you seeing in the research that you do?
Yeah, I've been doing this work for a while, for a couple decades, and I've really never seen the conversation around boys and men like it is now. There's a lot of discussion, of course, going on around mental health, right? We're discussing mental health a
Hmm.
lot, and certainly people are concerned around suicide rates, and particularly around men, since men do consist of most suicide deaths. Um, Concern around overdose deaths as well, and as well. But I think part of that conversation is also just even kind of in the background with that, right? That for a long time, men in particular had a script that they could follow. Like, here's what I do to be a guy. I go out, I get a job, I'm a provider, I provide for my family. My wife, is somebody who can, rely on me as the primary financial provider, et cetera. And the script has changed for a lot of guys, right? And so we're really
Hmm.
trying to figure out and reconstruct, like, what is that script for men, in 2025? And I think that's just a hard landscape for them to figure out.
So, in the research that you've looked at, how does this idea of traditional masculinity play into this? I mean, I'm talking about, that, as you mentioned, right, that idea of being independent, you're emotionally reserved. I mean, you hear this saying, toughen up, right? I mean, how does that impact boys and men?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably, you might have heard of this, and probably a lot of your listeners have heard of this, like, right? Like to, toughen it up, suffer and kind of a lot of guys suffering in silence,
Hmm.
suck it up and be a man. And yeah, I think the good thing, right, is that, the evidence shows that we've seen some shifting in this over time where I think more and more men feel like they can ask for help, right? They can reach out for that. Those norms are shifting and changing, but I think that's still the case for many guys, right? That they still feel like they've got to be strong, right? They've got to be tough. Part of that maybe is just like to be a man because that's what guys are, right? Like guys have to
Hmm.
they have to be strong. They can't show weakness. But I think a lot of guys too, they feel like, other people are, relying on me, right? Other people are counting on me. So I've got to like keep it all together, like keep it all like I've got it under control. And so, but what it ends up happening is that those guys do suffer in silence. And what happens over time is they get worse and worse. And I think that the evidence of that, right, is that we see so many guys that the ultimate outcome is that they can't take it anymore, and then they end up taking their own lives.
So I have a vested interest in this. I mean, I have a husband, but I'm also raising two boys. And I have talked about this quite a bit in my personal life is that
Yeah.
and I think that there is not a lot of empathy for boys. Um,
Mm,
in regards to all of this. And being a girl, I very much believe that we needed to do more to raise girls up, especially when I was growing up. I mean, the benefits of that, I think there is still not equity and equality when it comes to being female, in particular in this country. And then when you look at these boys who are struggling, we're like, well, you're privileged, right? Especially if you're a white boy, you have
yeah.
privilege. You have all of these things that you were born with. And now, oh, you're struggling too bad, right? Even I think there's this perception with men. And I say all of this because I feel as if when we were raising girls up, we kind of left boys behind and boys are still struggling. So how do how do we get people, even we can give them all the research, right? We can say there is this problem going on,
Yeah.
but if there's not empathy for to understand that we actually need to do more for boys, I don't know if any of this is going to resonate.
Mm. I love the way that you put that together, Gemma, and just talked about that challenge, right? Like, 'cause I think that's also a challenge in the conversation around boys and men, right? Like that, in
Mhm.
particular, that boys and men have been a central part of the conversation for a lot of history, right? Have experienced a lot of privilege and power, right?
Right.
And so how do we kind of center them in this conversation, and can we center them in this conversation and say, hey, perhaps we need to have more empathy for boys, and potentially even like provide additional resources and interventions, right, to support boys and men. And can we do that and continue to like make strides for girls and women, right? And I think if I kind of hear you right, like I certainly think we can, right? I think that, I have
Mhm.
men that I love, right? I have two daughters and a wife and a mother, right? And I think that we need to continue to make strides for girls and women and empathize with boys and men. And I think part of that is to move it out of the emotional conversation. This can be a really
Mhm.
emotional conversation around gender, and focus it on the data, right? And I certainly think in my own experience, one of those data points that's really caught people's attention. I had a conversation around this on Saturday with just somebody, is around suicide rates for men. And people are
Right.
just continually struck by, wow, I had no idea that we were losing this many men to suicide. What's happening? Men must really be struggling, right, for us to lose this many men, right? If there are
Mhm.
49,000 suicide deaths a year, 80% of those are men. We must really need to take a step back and think about what's going on with our adolescents, right? What's going on with our guys? And I think that's a point that really does generate some empathy.
And so with that, if we start thinking about masculinity in a healthier way, I mean, for example, I mean, I have always told my boys that their emotions matter. It's okay if they cry. It's okay if they get mad. It's okay if they get
Yeah,
angry.
yeah,
Whatever, right? Whatever emotions they have, because they're people first. They're human beings
sure.
first. We all have the same emotions. And I think we allow girls to have a lot more fluidity with our emotions and even with our friendships than we allow for boys and men. So if we start looking at masculinity in a better way, right? Just start with the humanity of it. What values or what can we take away from this traits do you think should be at the center of the conversation, if that makes sense? And I've got about 2.5 minutes left with you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we need a more flexible script, right? For
Yeah.
for boys and men, right? And I think you're talking about that, right? Like that it's okay, like to express emotions sometimes, but I think also that there are times that it's okay to be, you're out, you're playing your sport, whatever it might be, to like be tough, right? There's flexibility there, and I
Mhm.
think we need good models for them to see what that looks like, right? And so I think that means men in the community that can demonstrate that flexibility, whether it's coaches, men in churches, teachers, right? All sorts of folks like that, or other models. The a great example that I like to think of, and this is in my own household. We have conversations about the TV show Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso is
Hmm.
a show that has a great example of like men showing a lot of flexibility in what it means
Yeah.
to be men, where you can be tough, but you can also be tearful. You can ask for help, right? And I just think we need more models like that to give boys and men a flexible script for masculinity.
With with my last minute left with you, if there was one thing that you want folks to take away from your upcoming presentation, what is that?
Yeah, I just think that I love the way you talked about it, Gemma, that it's important to have empathy.
Hmm.
There are boys and men are struggling in a lot of ways, and the data supports that. And if we can empathize with that, that gives us a great kind of segue to understand and support them. And I think that would be great.
Well, I am so sorry we're out of time. I could literally probably talk the whole hour with you about this. So thank you so much. We've been talking with Dr. Matthew Janucki. He's associate professor in the Department of Psychological Sciences at Boise State University. He will have an upcoming presentation, and we will put all of that information on our website. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Thanks so much for listening. And just a reminder, you can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
Stay connected with Boise State Public Radio on Instagram. From breaking news and local stories to behind-the-scenes videos, it's where our community comes together. Follow Boise State Public Radio today.